Welcome to The Explainer. So, what even is a normal brain? I mean, have you ever really thought about it? For a long time, we've kind of been sold this idea of a single, standard way of thinking. Well, today, we're going to pull back that curtain, we're going to see where that idea came from, and explore the amazing diversity that actually defines the human mind.
All right, let's just dive right in with the big one. Is there really such a thing as a normal brain? I mean, seriously. This one question, it challenges a super fundamental assumption, an idea that shapes, well, pretty much everything from our schools to our workplaces.
You know, most of us, we kind of just assume there's a standard or neurotypical brain out there. It's like this default setting for how humans are supposed to think and behave. But what if that whole model isn't a scientific fact at all? Let's dig in and unpack where this concept really came from.
So, here's the thing. This idea of a standard brain, it turns out it's not really a biological fact. It's a historical one. And the story of how we got it, it starts in a pretty surprising place.
Okay, so get this. Between the 1840s and the 1940s, there was this super popular thing. They called it a science called phrenology. And the whole idea was that specific little spots in your brain were responsible for specific personality traits. And the kicker? They believed you could measure someone's entire character just by the shape of their head. Wild, right?
And I mean, they made this incredibly concrete. We're talking about phrenologists literally examining the bumps on people's heads to figure out their character. They created this whole system to score you, to rank you against everyone else.
And you can kind of see how this idea really took hold, right? At the same time, medicine was starting to define a normal state for physical health. Well, phrenology was doing the exact same thing, but for the mind. All of a sudden, people were being taught to see themselves, their own identity, in relation to this imaginary statistical community.
And here's the real game changer. They actually invented a concept they called the general mediocrity, basically a standard head size to compare everybody against. This created a super powerful link between measuring something and deciding what's normal. And that idea, the idea of an average person to compare yourself to, man, that stuck around in our culture long after anyone even remembered what phrenology was.
Okay, so thankfully, science has moved on from measuring bumps on heads. So let's talk about the modern understanding, the one that replaces this really outdated idea of a single normal brain.
Okay, first things first, let's get some terms straight. The word neurotypical. It's not a biological default. It doesn't mean how a brain is supposed to be. It specifically refers to a way of thinking and processing that just happens to line up with what society has, over time, decided is normal. It's a social standard, not a biological one.
Right. So if your brain doesn't fit into that neurotypical box, you're not abnormal. The term is neurodivergent, and all that means is that your brain functions in ways that are different from that dominant societal standard. That's it. It's a totally neutral term that covers this massive, beautiful range of natural human variation.
And this shift in language, it gets to the very heart of a massive shift in thinking. You've got the old medical model which saw any kind of neurodivergence as a disorder, a deficit, something to be fixed. But the neurodiversity model, it flips that script completely. It says, hey, maybe the problem isn't the person. Maybe the problem is a society that's only built for one type of mind and doesn't know how to accommodate the rest.
I love this quote from a counselor. It really sums it up. The goal isn't to force everyone into uniformity, to make every thread the same color. The goal is to appreciate the entire tapestry, with all its different textures and colors woven together. That's where the beauty is.
So what actually happens when we stop trying to iron out all the differences and instead embrace this diversity? Well, it turns out this whole spectrum of minds isn't just something to tolerate or accept. It's an incredibly powerful asset.
Yeah, in workplaces and on teams, there's a term for this: cognitive diversity. It's basically the whole mix of expertise, perspectives, and different ways of thinking you can get in a group. It comes from our backgrounds, our experiences, all the stuff that makes us who we are. So why does this matter? What's the big advantage of getting all these different thinkers in one room? Well, the research is pretty cool. It shows that these teams are basically idea-generating machines. They're way better at spotting blind spots and challenging each other's biases. And because being different is just expected, people feel way more comfortable sharing those wild, out-of-the-box ideas.
But, and this is a really important but, it's not quite as simple as just throwing a bunch of different people in a room and hoping for magic. The science is super clear on this. The benefits only show up when that diversity is managed well. You have to have an environment of psychological safety where people actually feel safe enough to speak up and be different. It's definitely not an add diversity and stir kind of recipe.
And that really gets to the core mindset shift we all need to make. It's about separating the idea of different from wrong, and separating not normal from broken. These are false dichotomies, and honestly, they do a lot of harm. Letting go of them is the key to unlocking all that potential we were just talking about.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? Like, practically speaking, how do we build environments, whether it's at work or just in our daily lives, where all these different kinds of minds can actually truly thrive?
A huge piece of the puzzle is just recognizing that we all process sensory information differently. And I'm not just talking about light and sound. It goes way deeper. We're talking about our sense of movement and balance. That's your vestibular system. And even our sense of our own internal body state. Things like hunger or your heart rate. That's interoception. It's this whole sensory spectrum.
And what that means is we can actually design our physical spaces to support everybody. Think about it. Simple things like having designated quiet zones, or giving people control over their own lighting, or offering different kinds of seating options to support our sense of body position. That's proprioception. These aren't huge, complicated changes, but they can make a world of difference in helping everyone feel comfortable and able to focus.
And look, this doesn't have to be super complicated. Even simple, targeted activities can be used to help with things like self-regulation and development. Things like these brain booster cards, for example, are a great way to show how these big concepts can be made really practical and accessible for, everyone, from kids to adults. But of course, it's about more than just the physical space, right? To build a truly neuro-inclusive world, we have to rethink our systems. We're talking about flexible company policies, real training for everybody, and crucially, empowering people to advocate for themselves and for the conditions they need to shine.
And all of this brings us to one last, really powerful thought. As these kinds of neurodiversity initiatives keep growing, the evidence is pointing in one direction. Cognitive diversity is becoming absolutely essential for success. It's not just a nice-to-have, it's a competitive advantage. So really, the question isn't whether we should accommodate different minds, it's whether we're ready to unlock the incredible power that's been waiting there all along.